Emotional algebra, where the heart meets the math. What is integral is derivative as you figure out your path. Power plus emotions equals more than you can see. Listening to the wisdom of our host, Dr. E. Emotional algebra with Dr. E.
So this episode is a really unique concept, and the conversation ran a little bit long. We got really deep into it. So we decided to break this episode into two parts. So let's pick it up where we left off with part 2. Here's Dr. E.
So, to tie the slide, is life events are going to come with emotions no matter what. If we think an experience hasn't come with an emotion, again, I think we're fooling ourselves. That's what I believe. So how we have perceived those emotions over time will influence our perceptions, beliefs, and attitudes. And again, that's going to depend on how we interpret those situations over time. Previous events will influence perceptions, beliefs, and attitudes. And that's all that idea of, again, those affect bridges and that fragmented emotion and how it resonates with the emotions that we're feeling that are coming from those current life events. We're all born with the same emotions. It's what we do with them that makes us different. So that's the one thing I want to that I really help people to understand is whether or not we feel emotions the same or interpret the same, that makes us unique. But that we experience all the same emotions, that's what we have in common. Now, people will say that some people are genetically predispositioned to, like, sociopaths, they say, are genetically predispositions potentially to not feel guilt. It doesn't mean they don't feel guilt. It's how they might be genetically predispositioned to the depth of the experience, maybe the volume of how they might experience guilt and or their perception of guilt, and how they see it, how they interpret it. So that's the thing I want to look at is that uniqueness of each of us in perceptions, temperaments, genetics, all those things can play into the way we perceive emotion. Affect bridges, as we talked about, connect these experiences with similar emotions connected to beliefs, and the resonance can increase the amplitude or volume of those emotions. So I don't know if you know this fact, but there have been, I know at French Fieldhouse at Ohio State, you remember I'm a big Ohio State fan, but in French Fieldhouse, they don't have any concerts. They have the skull session before the game, but they don't play concerts in French Fieldhouse. Why might that be, Andrew?
I would imagine something about the volume of the sound in there damaging or having some effect. I don't know about damaging, maybe subtly damaging.
How loud do you think the skull session is? And with a basketball game of people yelling and screaming?
I don't know what a skull session is. So, and maybe
I'm sorry, that's the pregame where the marching band comes in and the team comes in and it's like a pregame pep rally. Sorry, but yeah, I needed to explain that. But that's where they come in before the game, the marching band plays.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be loud.
Right. What it has to do is with resonance, is sound resonance, and that every object carries the resonance, the vibrations of those frequencies. When you have a symphony play, those symphonies are often playing in intensity. So there is some amplitude, but there's a consistency of the waveforms. And when you have a waveform that hits an endpoint, so if you have a girder, a metal girder, and that sound is moving through that metal girder and it hits the end, and then it bounces off that metal girder. If it bounces off in sync with that metal girder and then goes the other way and keeps bouncing off, it's going to increase the amplitude of that frequency. Buildings have actually crumbled parts. I think there was a mall years and years ago that crumbled, that fell apart in a walkway area because the sound waves that were carried through that perfectly resonated with the frequency that was potentiated through that structure. So it's not about noise necessarily, even in our life. It's about the resonance, the physics of those emotions that are getting louder and louder and louder, trying to break down those defenses because, again, they want attention, they need attention. So ignoring it doesn't help. And as life brings these events to us, it's like playing in that building. It's like that symphony playing, and it increases the waveform, and it gets louder and louder, and eventually things are going to break. And that's okay. That's not the problem. The problem is that we fought so hard to keep it from breaking rather than to let it be what it's meant to be and to hear the sounds for what they are.
Interesting. So in other words, just to go back to the skull session, they don't want to. Do they not want certain sounds in that building? Is that kind of what they're saying? Like,
They
because
don't. Yeah, they don't want consistent harmonic and consistent maintained frequencies like you would have in a symphony, that you would
right.
have in a music concert, where you'd have longer notes that are playing, and so I can't explain it exactly right, but I know that's the
Yeah.
situation, and like I said, what's brought down some other sections of buildings and things like
Right.
that is
Right.
hard. So they're often looking at those things when they're constructing buildings. They're looking at, is there a risk, or that is this something that we can, play in? So even symphony halls are obviously made to resonate frequencies, to bring sounds to life, and they're made understanding those ideas of physics when they're built. That's why they don't crumble.
Right.
So even that's about integrity. We come back to our idea
Yeah.
of integrity. So what we want to remember, keep in mind, our defenses will try to insulate our conscious mind from this emotional interference, so it can again remain most often as conscious or logic based as possible. So let's now talk about this idea of noise canceling, because to me, that's what defenses are. Defenses are basically noise canceling devices. All right. So how a noise canceling headphone works is there is a sound. There are all these sounds that happen, we're hearing all the time. So I have this is a noise canceling headphone here. So I hear like nothing outside of this side. It's, on this side, I hear whatever's going on out here. But what happens is there's a little microphone in that headphone. And inside of that headphone is a little computer. It's a microprocessor that assesses and measures all the different frequencies going on at any one time. So remember, each frequency, just like you have the white line there, is the waveform. They're showing the waveform with a different amplitude. So that amplitude is the volume. The height of the wave determines the volume. The frequency is the wavelength, is the distance between one wave, in one length of one wave, then it flows in the next wave, the next wave, the next wave. Now, when it reaches that microprocessor, that's going to determine those frequencies, multiple frequencies going on in there. Then, when you have the headphone part on, or when you have the earbud in, that's going to be just a natural muffle. It's going to muffle the sound. It's going to get in the way of that sound reaching our ear. The microprocessor, though, is going to produce what's called a phase shifted frequency of that same, a phase shift of that frequency. So when the one wave is at its peak, the phase shifted frequency is at the trough. So why am I explaining on this? Because to me, this is what we try to do with our defenses. Our defenses try to drown out the noise by basically noise canceling, emotion canceling, but it doesn't mean that the noise disappears. As you can see, the noise is still happening outside the headphone, but inside we might not be hearing it, and we think everything's fine. Well, what if that headphone gets so good that it's drowning out the sound of a train coming towards us, and we're in our car? That's why, again, people don't want wearing headphones in cars, because when they come on certain things, they can't hear sirens sometimes because of the noise interference, the muffling of the car, depending on how good that is, and or the headphones and or the noise canceling. So all this becomes additive. But the thing you want to look at is the limitation of a noise canceling headphone. And people say, well, I still hear stuff. Right, because the strength of the driver, in other words, what's producing that phase shifted frequency, has to be able to produce the equal and opposite amplitude of that phase shifted, or that incoming frequency. So if it can't match the amplitude, the volume of the actual frequency, it's not going to totally drown it out. It'll just sound quieter. And that's something that you want to understand too about our own defenses, is we might still feel emotions, What happens if they just break through our defenses? And then we hear the full volume, the full amplitude of all those emotions going on. And that's often when people have those, what they feel are breakdowns, is their emotional bank accounts are spent. They've called in the debt and they can't pay the debt. And now they're like bankrupt from the defense standpoint, and or the battery, if you want to look at it in that way, the power source to their noise canceling device wore out, and now all of a sudden they're hearing all the emotions they were drowning out full force. Again, all kinds of metaphors, analogies we can lose. That's when then all those emotions are going to be there, and those waveforms have been going on forever since they were activated, and they're not going to stop because we tell them to stop. They're not going to stop because we think time will just pass. Now, over time, could we say amplitude could get a little less? Possibly. And it might be other things that we do to compensate for that. And I think I talked about that. Just because we feel confidence doesn't mean that we've eliminated or reduced doubt and confusion. It's just the volume of confidence has gotten louder to drown out that doubt and confusion. If doubt and confusion steadily increases inside its amplitude and its noise, then potentially what happens if it surpasses confidence? Confidence becomes the noise canceling device potentially for doubt and confusion and or other cognitive defenses. Arrogance can be a noise canceling device for doubt and confusion. So we want to see those things and how they play out emotionally. So defenses are trying to quiet interference. They emit the phase shifted frequency of emotion. What happens when the phase shifted amplitude doesn't match the amplitude of the emotion? Yeah, we're going to hear it. And then emotional resonance, again, when an emotion is emitted, the beliefs, attitudes, memories, and emotions that resonate with that emotion or its harmonics can vibrate. And, we touched on that before. So I want to go to the idea, and I didn't include a slide on this, but I want to go to the idea of why I tie all this to quantum physics and energy also. Is there are three forces in the universe: light energy, dark matter, that I've talked about before. I've touched on them, and I've tied them to love, fear, and pain. And people might wonder why. Well, if you look at what quantum physics has shown us, and Hawking figured it out, and other physicists figured it out. I don't want to give him all the credit, but he wrote about it very, very well. And is that light energy, and this is why I connect these two emotions. Light energy has a positive gravitational force. All right. It draws objects towards it. They found out in space that the space between objects in space isn't empty. It actually has a force to it. And that force is what they call dark energy. It has a negative gravitational force. And that they measured by the mass of the objects in the universe, and they're spreading from each other, and the depletion of the strong force of positive gravity. And they realized that the objects are spreading at a quicker rate, don't ask me how, than objects would normally spread on their own. So they realized that there's a force to the space. It's got mass. It's about 68, I think 68% of the mass of the universe. Collectively, dark energy and dark matter are theorized to be about 90 to 95% of the mass of the universe. All right. So that leaves light energy 5 to 10% of the mass of the universe. Now, dark matter is when they were looking at objects through time or through space, they realized those objects weren't in the location they should be. They weren't the color they should be. And some of the other features were letting them know that there's something else that is bending gravity. So it's not, while it's uniformly spread across the universe, it's in these different little blobs. And y'all may be going, why in the heck is he going through all this? Well, we're going to get to that in a sec. So as we look at these little blobs of dark matter, is what they called it, because it seems to have a weight and a mass and a matter to it to be able to bend gravity, to bend light, to bend perception of objects. It's uniformly spread across, and we'll call these little balls of dark matter. Who knows? It could be any shape or form. But let's now go to love, fear, and pain. All right. What does love do to people, relationships, or connection to objects, Andrew?
Strengthens them.
Yep. And it brings us closer, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is what does fear do to our connections and distance between people, concepts, objects?
Pushes them away.
Right. And what does pain do to our perception of ourself and our place in our world and our family and our country and our communities and our universe?
Um, I would say, I don't know. Help me out here, Dr. E.
It bends them.
Oh, okay. So
It
yeah.
bends the way
It's
that we
pain's like
perceive
the dark
objects.
matter, essentially. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that to me, when that's where when I was doing that first thought, that love and fear, the two forces, and I read A Brief History of Time and looked at dark matter, and I'm like, pain. Then it all came together. And that's why I say
Mm.
all other emotions are derivatives of those three. So as we look at this, that's where I want to say, are light energy and dark matter, are any of them bad or wrong or weak or good or strong or white for that matter?
Hmm. Couldn't they all be both?
Well, they're all both and neither,
Hmm.
because the universe wouldn't exist without those three forces as it is. To me, I look at what created the specificity of the universe was potentially dark matter. What creates the uniqueness of who we are, but our pain.
Hmm.
Fear is always going to push people apart, but it's how we interpret that concept of pain that even affects fear. So pain influences fear, pain influences our perceptions of love, and together the three forces together create the perfect combination of experiences in life for us to sort things through, to feel what we feel, to figure it out, to grow from it. And through this is where love shines through everything. Light shines through, whether it's a wave or a particle. I always tell people is the fact that you can see a star means that star's touching you. The fact that you can see somebody that you're in a relationship means that their love is touching you. So sometimes even thinking about somebody and thinking about that relationship, they're touching you. Even when it's daytime, can we see the stars in the sky? No, they're still there. And that's what I want people to see is the permanency of that concept of love and all those emotions. Even when we don't feel it, it's still there. It's just that the volume, the amplitude, or the brightness of those pain and or fear-based emotions feels like it's overwhelming our ability to see those and feel those love-based emotions. So they're all there always, all the time. And when we understand the physics and the connections of physics to the universe and to emotion, and that's why I say it's kind of a unified theory that simplifies the way we see things, then we can see things for purpose because there truly is no bad or good or right or wrong or strong or weak or win or lose in this universe, in this equity. It just is. And it's our place to navigate our way through this and understand the connections and the relationships of all these concepts that we're bringing together here.
Yeah, and I'm just reminded too of our last episode when we went through your poem, Guess Who? Just
Mhm.
I'm sensing, Dr. E, that you really think that pain has it's a pivotal emotion. I mean, as you're
It is.
saying, it's one of the three, I guess, pillar emotions, but it really is pivotal, right? It is what makes us unique. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Because two people can see the same experience and have two totally different
yeah,
interpretations of it, often because of their history, often because of their own perceptions of emotions that may have driven feelings of pain. Remember, fear is trying to protect us and prevent us from experiencing pain. So the way that person has experienced pain is going to affect even their processing of fear. So pain is pivotal, and their connection to love and understanding of love is going to affect their perceptions of pain and then affect their perceptions of fear. So all those three emotions are all totally intertwined. We can't have one without the other and have the the experiences that we have in the universe and in our
got it.
lives.
Yeah, interesting way to think about all this, Dr. E. How long did it take you to develop these thoughts?
Um, when I first started in my practice, I really started to think there's more to this. And then I looked at the power stuff. And then from the power stuff, I started to read a lot on, into just thinking there was more and that there was a connection between all this. So it's still evolving. My
Right.
interpretation of emotions, like my interpretation of stupid really just hit me in the last few years. Failure was an early one, but this idea of quantum physics and energy, that goes back, geez, 25 years, really, 20, more than that, probably 28, really
Yeah.
starting to
And
look at those pieces.
is that the point that you read Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, or is that more recent?
That was probably 25 after I started looking in the quantum physics. See, what I've always been careful to do is I try to formulate my own theories based on what kind of I might have known or put together through my own experimentation and my own thinking, and then I might read something else. So I had my ideas of physics and energy. I put them all together and formulated them, and I said, okay, now let me read this book and
Yeah.
see how it fits. So I'll build my model, then test my model, and then I redefine my model or refine my model, and then I'll test my model. And that's been the whole experience through time, and it's really helped me grow a lot even in my spiritual perspectives because, I mean, like I say, we're all connected. It's all connected, and this is all school, and we're all infinitely loved. We might not
Yeah.
feel it, but that's where you gotta understand, why are we going through this? Is it really to punish me? Is it really to challenge me? And that's
Yeah.
why the shift in perspective has us either avoiding the test or taking the test in
Yeah.
many ways.
I once talked to a NASA astrophysicist, and she told me that if you really think about it, we're all made of the same thing. We're all just stardust. We're all like
Yes.
exploding. We're all like little dust of exploded stars that happened billions of years ago. Which I thought was an
Absolutely.
interesting way to look at things. And she was sort of telling me how that she thinks the entire universe is connected because of that. Even though, like
Mhm.
you've talked about, like things change their forms, emotions
Mhm.
change their forms. So I'm just reminded of that. Really interesting, Dr. E.
Yeah, and the more that Einstein studied the universe, the more he believed that there was a creator because there were too many coincidences and too many things that happened that really couldn't be explained. So let me get to the denouement, the unfolding, the final points of this, and then want people to realize the goal of therapy and growth is not to drown out the noise; it's to return each emotion to its resting state. So there's some types of therapy that, for me, in some ways, they build up our defenses. They have us use some of our rationalization and justification of why things and explain things away, and that is helpful to help us minimize that noise. Whereas I want people to learn to love and accept and acknowledge every feeling, every emotion, every experience to see that they can be understood rather than we just have to drown it out. And that's why also even I acknowledge people. Sometimes I say, you might need some medication in this point to help you to see and reinterpret things differently. Why then we help you to look deeper into why it's there so you don't keep having these relapses and lapses and and some of these issues that you keep finding. And I'll even say sometimes these might be part of your growth issues in this time that you're in. And that's okay. We're all meant to grow from everything. So, how do we return our emotions to the resting state? Well, what is the equal and opposite emotion of fear and pain? It's love. So, we got to find that ability to love and accept every experience. To remember, shame says that it's time to love ourselves again. Guilt says it's time to love other people again. And or hierarchically, we want to see, have those emotions been used as weapons? Were they used unfairly? And do we learn to see pain or guilt and shame for their true purpose, even helplessness and hopelessness? So all these emotions we're there to learn from, and they are all the notes in the keyboard of life. They are all the colors in the spectrum that create masterpieces. So it's time to look at the paintings that we're creating. It's time to listen to the songs that we're creating. And there's a teaser for another episode on, songs that I've created through AI that we're gonna talk about
Mm.
soon. And how do we shift our perceptions of our emotions and past experiences? It's shifting again the way that we see these things as good or bad or right or wrong or strong or weak, to seeing them all as having purpose and value, to seeing that they're there for a reason, to seeing that just like all the colors in the rainbow, all the colors in the universe, all the beautiful nebula you see through to the telescopes, the stars, the galaxies, that there's a lot of beauty out here. And there's a lot of beauty in here. And that's how we shift our perceptions. And that's through, again, often through therapy. We're often stuck in our own belief system. So find somebody who can help you with this and talk it through, and find somebody who's good at it too. There's different qualitative levels of therapists, the same way as doctors, the same way as in a lot of fields, So look for people who you really feel like you connect with and you feel like really do understand what they're talking about. What happens if I heal my past and new experience evoke the same emotions? Well, so let's say this is somebody who is unresolved, right? And all this stuff is ringing inside. It's pretty loud right now, right? Now, let's say I heal this stuff and I return it to its resting state. Then I have an experience again. And I heal and I acknowledge that one and I learn from that one. And I have another one and I acknowledge that one and I learn from that one. What's happening after every time this life pinged this emotion and I've resolved it? It doesn't make noise anymore.
Right.
So as it doesn't make noise anymore, I've returned it to its resting state. So each experience that I have that pings an emotion, it's new. It's not that it's new, but it's starting from the beginning point rather than pinging it once, pinging it another time, pinging it another time, pinging it another time, and increasing the amplitude. So we don't increase the amplitude. We're not coming from past beliefs and attitudes and situations anymore. We're coming from the present and we're responding to those emotions in the present rather than reacting to them often, which is what we do from our past. So that's the story. That's the wrap.
Yeah, that's it. So they're just putting it back up for people so they can take a screenshot or get one last look at this. Dr. E, bringing the visual aids and the auditory aids today. That is the first time I think we've tried that on the podcast. Very helpful, actually. Don't you think?
Well, again, this is my favorite thing to teach, and it took a long time to get here because there was a lot of pieces beforehand that I wanted to make sure viewers were able to follow. If this is one of your first episodes, I'd encourage you to go back and see the history of where all this how we got here to this. Remember that everything exists in there is balance to things. We might not see it or understand it. There is balance. It's just about finding it.
Yeah. So, Dr. E, lots here. Looking forward to talking about the songs. I'm also reminded too, we talked about John Lennon a little bit much earlier in this episode. And that last slide actually got me to thinking Love Is another John Lennon. I think it was John Lennon lyric. Maybe it was a McCartney. I'm not sure, but it was Beatles. Love is all you need. So
Yep. I think that was the Beatles.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It was the Beatles for sure. I don't know who wrote the lyric. I wonder if it was Lennon. No, it seems like a Lennon to me, but
I could see it. And Imagine is one of my absolute favorite songs, and that's all about eliminating, really removing the barriers that we've put between ourselves, whether it be religion, nations, and helping people as being common men, that we're all in this together. And he really was a master at bringing out the lyrics and the songs and the poetic way that he saw the world.
Yeah, it was a great one. All right, Dr. E.
All right, my brother.
Yeah,
always good to work with you. And until next time.